You and your brother, Mr. Hunt, are suing your mother and your father. 2 weeks ago, they dropped a bomb during an argument. Your dad, Mr. Jacobs, is not your biological father. Time they were babies, you were the only father your children have ever known.
I started to hear a lot of noise in my mom's bedroom. Well, those ain't my kids anyway, so I was doing you a favor and left out the door.
That really didn't sit too well with me, and it hurt me.
You know I was just mad. You know I was mad. I was just mad.
You made this statement to Mr. Jacobs
Yes,
that you're
ma'am.
not their father anyway.
I was in shock. I was just like, how you just gonna, despite the argument, they argued, that's cool. But when you got your children, that don't got nothing to do with us.
Sitting in the living room playing video games with my friends, I overheard what he said at the house. I was sitting in a state of shock. Me and my friends actually, we was
having to get together. Everybody was at the house.
That comment?
Yes, I did, Your Honor, but I don't believe my children heard the whole comment.
It had me.
Two siblings came into court carrying a truth that had shattered their sense of identity only weeks earlier. For most of their lives, they believed they knew exactly who they were and where they came from. They believed they shared the same parents, the same blood, the same story. But a single argument inside their home changed everything. In the middle of a heated fight between their mother and the man they had always called their father, words were spoken that could not be taken back. In anger, the man shouted that the children were not his anyway. That sentence hung in the air, heavy and poisonous, and it landed directly in the hearts of the two people who overheard it. The sister, Precious, was 26 years old. The brother, Hector, was in his 30s. Both of them had grown up calling this man Dad. He was the one who attended school events, graduations, and milestones. He was present when Precious gave birth to her own child. To them, he was not just a father figure, he was their father in every way that mattered. So when they heard those words during the argument, it felt like the ground beneath them cracked open. Precious described how the argument unfolded. She heard raised voices coming from her mother's bedroom. Then the man stormed out, heading toward the kitchen, shouting that the children were not his and that he had been doing their mother a favor all along. He left the house without saying goodbye, without offering comfort, without explaining. That moment broke something inside her. It wasn't just the accusation itself, it was the ease with which it was said, as if the truth had been waiting to escape for years. Hector overheard it too. He was sitting in the living room playing video games with friends when he heard the shouting. His friends heard it as well. He froze, unable to process what he had just heard. In an instant, his identity felt unstable. Everything he thought he knew about his family came into question, and the embarrassment of having his friends hear it made the pain even deeper. When the man they called Dad was asked about the comment, he admitted he said it but claimed it was spoken in anger. He insisted he did not believe the children heard the full statement. Still, the damage was done. Once a doubt like that is planted, it grows uncontrollably. He also admitted that after the argument, he felt overwhelmed and posted on social media about his pain, feeling as though the world was against him. But none of that erased what his words had done to his children. Their mother tried to explain herself, saying that things had been said in the heat of the moment. She claimed it wasn't meant to be taken seriously, but when pressed further, the truth began to unravel. Precious asked the question she had been holding inside since childhood. Was there something she needed to know? Was there a reason for the different last names in the family? Why did her last name differ from her brother, and from the man she called Dad? As the questions came, the mother's certainty fell apart. She admitted something devastating. She said she did not actually know who Precious's biological father was. Those words hit Precious like a physical blow. For 26 years, she believed this man was her father. She had never doubted it because he had always been there. He showed up when it mattered. To her, that was proof enough. But then another name surfaced. A man known in the neighborhood as Tommy. Precious had heard whispers about him for years. She remembered overhearing conversations at family gatherings, comments about how she looked like him. Each time she asked her mother about it, she was shut down. Now, in court, that name returned with force. The mother admitted she had been involved with this man around the time Precious was conceived. The shock turned to horror when Precious realized who this man was. He wasn't a stranger. He was someone she had known as Uncle Tommy, someone introduced to her as a family friend. The idea that this man could possibly be her biological father made her physically ill. She broke down, unable to cope with the betrayal, the secrecy, and the confusion all at once. Uncle Tommy agreed to take a paternity test. He appeared remotely, confirming that he and Precious's mother had been intimate years ago. The mother admitted the relationship, though she tried to minimize it. Precious was overwhelmed, crying uncontrollably, struggling to breathe through the weight of what she was hearing. She felt her entire family collapsing in front of her. The man she had always called Dad stepped in emotionally, insisting that regardless of biology, those were his children. He declared that no piece of paper would change how he felt or how he would act. He promised Precious that he would still walk her down the aisle at her wedding. His voice cracked as he spoke, trying to hold the family together while it was tearing itself apart. Precious explained how deeply this uncertainty had affected her. She said she felt angry all the time. She didn't know who she was anymore. She hadn't even been able to open up fully to her fiancé because she felt so lost inside. She needed answers, not to replace the man who raised her, but to understand herself and her history. When the DNA results were finally ready, the tension in the courtroom was unbearable. The first result addressed whether Uncle Tommy was Precious's father. He was not. The relief was immediate and overwhelming. Precious cried tears of gratitude, thanking God aloud. For a brief moment, it felt like the nightmare was ending. But then came the second result. The test confirmed that the man who raised her, the man she called Dad, was also not her biological father. The relief vanished, replaced by a deeper devastation. Precious collapsed emotionally. The truth she feared most was now real. She was not biologically related to either man. Still crying, she begged her mother for answers. She needed to know who her father was. Her mother admitted she remembered another name but could not give certainty. The lack of clarity hurt just as much as the truth itself. The man who raised Precious held onto her, telling her again that he was not going anywhere. He reminded her that being a father was about showing up, not just DNA. Then the focus shifted to Hector. The assumption had always been that if Precious wasn't biologically related, at least Hector surely was. But when his results came back, they revealed that the man he called Dad was not his biological father either. The courtroom erupted in chaos. Anger, disbelief, and heartbreak collided all at once. And just when it seemed nothing more could be revealed, the mother dropped another bomb. She admitted that Hector was not even her biological son. He was her cousin's child. His mother had died during childbirth, and she took him in and raised him as her own. She had never told him the truth. Even worse, she admitted that she had allowed him to believe the man in court was his father, despite knowing there was uncertainty. Hector stood there in shock, realizing that his entire life story had been a lie. The woman he believed was his mother was. The sister he believed was his biological sibling wasn't. The man he believed was his father wasn't either. In a matter of minutes, every family connection he knew was stripped away. The court was forced to take a recess as emotions spiraled out of control. What began as a search for clarity had turned into a complete collapse of a family's foundation. And yet, in the middle of the chaos, the man who raised both of them continued to stand firm, refusing to abandon the children he loved, no matter what the DNA said. This was not just a case about paternity. It was about secrets, choices, and the lifelong consequences of silence. It was about two people who came to court hopping for answers, only to discover that the truth was far more complicated and painful than they ever imagined. After the recess, the emotional weight in the room had only grown heavier. What had already been revealed was enough to break anyone, but the truth was still unfolding in layers, each one more painful than the last. Precious sat trying to steady her breathing, her eyes swollen from crying, her hands shaking as she held onto the only man who had ever been consistent in her life. Even though the DNA said otherwise, she still looked at him as her father, because every memory she had confirmed that role. Hector stood a few steps away, silent, staring into nothing. His reality had been completely erased. He was no longer sure who his mother was, who his sister was, or where he truly belonged. The courtroom, which had once felt like a place for answers, now felt like a place where identities were stripped away without mercy. The judge tried to restore order, speaking calmly but firmly, reminding everyone that this level of truth is difficult even for those who hear stories like this every day. She addressed the mother directly, explaining the damage that secrecy causes, especially when it involves children who grow up believing one version of their life only to have it destroyed in adulthood. The mother could barely respond. Her apologies felt small compared to the harm already done. Precious finally found her voice again. Through tears, she explained that the pain wasn't just about biology. It was about trust. She said her entire life she defended her family, defended her mother, and defended the man she believed was her father, even when people in the neighborhood whispered and questioned. She never doubted because she was never given a reason to. Now she felt foolish for believing so strongly in something that was never fully true. She spoke about her upcoming wedding and how important it was for her to walk into that new chapter knowing who she was. She didn't want to carry anger and confusion into her marriage. She admitted she had been lashing out at people she loved, feeling rage without understanding where it came from. Now she realized that the anger was rooted in years of unanswered questions buried deep inside her. The man who raised her stepped forward again, his voice emotional but steady. He made it clear that he did not regret a single moment of raising Precious or Hector. He said he never loved them any less, even when doubt crossed his mind. He admitted that the argument where everything spilled out came from frustration and pain, not from a desire to hurt his children. Still, he took responsibility for the damage his words caused. He looked directly at Hector and told him that regardless of what anyone said or any test showed, he considered him his son. He said being a father is about sacrifice, protection, and presence, and he had given all of that without hesitation. Hector finally broke down at those words. The man he thought he had lost was still standing in front of him, refusing to walk away. The judge then addressed the complicated truth about Hector's biological background. The revelation that his biological mother had died at childbirth and that he was raised by his cousin shook him deeply. Hector struggled to process how many people had known the truth while he remained in the dark. He asked why he was never told, why he was allowed to grow up believing a lie when the truth, though painful, could have been shared with love. His mother admitted she was afraid of losing him, afraid he would feel abandoned or different. She thought keeping the secret would protect him, but standing in that courtroom, it was clear that the secret had done the opposite. It didn't protect him. It delayed the pain until it became unbearable. As emotions continued to spill over, the judge emphasized that while the past could not be changed, the future could still be shaped by honesty. She encouraged counseling, open communication, and time. She reminded them that healing from something like this does not happen in a day, a week, or even a year. It is a process that requires patience and accountability. Then, as if the day had not already been overwhelming enough, the court transitioned into another case, one that echoed the same themes of uncertainty and emotional strain. A man named Haynes stood before the court seeking clarity about a little girl named Zoe, a child he believed could be his daughter. For 4 years, he had lived in confusion, being told repeatedly that he was the father, then told he wasn't, only to be pulled back into hope again. He explained that when he first saw a picture of Zoe, he thought she was his son. The resemblance struck him deeply. When he realized it wasn't his son, the possibility that she could be his daughter changed everything. He wanted to be involved, to step up, but every time he tried, he was pushed away by uncertainty and mixed messages. Zoe's mother told a different story. She insisted that Haynes was not the father and claimed she had always been clear about that. Yet messages and timelines revealed inconsistency. At times, she admitted she may have told him he was the father out of anger or frustration. Other times, she said she only ever referred to him as a possibility. The back and forth had left Haynes emotionally exhausted. He described how painful it was to want to love a child but be kept at arm's length, unsure if he even had the right. He said he didn't want to confuse Zoe or disrupt her life, but he couldn't move forward without the truth. He needed certainty to either step fully into the role of a father or let go completely. The judge carefully broke down the timeline. Dates, relationships, and overlapping possibilities painted a picture of confusion that mirrored the earlier case. Once again, a child stood at the center of adult choices and unresolved emotions. Zoe was 4 years old, already old enough to notice the absence of a father figure in her life. Haynes admitted he waited years to come to court because he was repeatedly told he wasn't the father. Each time he began to accept that reality, a message would pull him back into hope. The emotional whiplash made it impossible for him to heal or move on. Zoe's mother admitted that the man listed on the birth certificate believed he was the father but was not involved in raising her. Despite having full custody, she acknowledged that Zoe asked questions about why she didn't have a dad like other children. Those questions haunted her, even as she resisted giving Haynes a clear answer. When the DNA results were finally read, the courtroom fell silent again. Haynes was not Zoe's biological father. The disappointment was immediate but quiet. He didn't shout or cry. He simply nodded, absorbing the truth he had waited 4 years to hear. It hurt, but at least the uncertainty was over. The judge expressed sadness for Zoe, a child still without clarity about her biological father. She encouraged Zoe's mother to continue searching for the truth, not just for herself, but for her daughter. Children, she explained, deserve honesty even when it is uncomfortable. As the cases concluded, a pattern emerged. Adults made choices in moments of fear, anger, or confusion, believing they were protecting themselves or their children. But time revealed the cost of those choices. Secrets did not disappear. They waited, growing heavier, until they demanded to be heard. For Precious and Hector, the journey ahead would not be easy. Their family structure had changed forever. But one thing remained constant. The love of the man who raised them did not waver. In a courtroom full of broken truths, that commitment stood out as the most real thing of all. They came seeking answers, and though the answers brought pain, they also brought clarity. From that clarity, healing could eventually begin, built not on assumptions or silence, but on truth. The courtroom slowly emptied, but the weight of what had been revealed did not leave with the people. For Precious and Hector, the truth followed them like a shadow, heavy and unavoidable. Everything they thought was solid now felt fragile. Their childhood memories replayed in their minds, moments that once felt safe now filled with questions. Birthdays, holidays, family gatherings, all of them suddenly looked different through this new lens. Precious sat quietly, staring down at her hands. She kept replaying the same thought over and over again. If the truth had been told earlier, Would the pain have been easier to carry? She wasn't angry because she didn't share DNA with the man who raised her. She was angry because she had been denied honesty. She felt like her entire identity had been built on a foundation that was never fully real, and now she had to rebuild herself from scratch. She thought about her wedding again, about standing at the end of the aisle, everyone watching her step into a new life. She wanted to walk forward with confidence, not with unanswered questions weighing her down. She realized that her anger toward her fiancé, her mood swings, her constant frustration, all came from this deep confusion she never knew how to explain. Knowing that helped her understand herself better, even though it didn't erase the pain. The man who raised her stayed close, refusing to leave her side. He told her again and again that biology didn't define their bond. He reminded her of scraped knees he helped heal, school projects he stayed up late to finish with her, the day she became a mother and he stood there proud. He said no test could erase those moments. Hearing that grounded her, even when everything else felt like it was slipping away. Hector struggled differently. He wasn't just questioning who his father was. He was questioning who his mother was too. Learning that the woman who raised him was actually his cousin shattered him. He felt betrayed, not because she took him in, but because she never trusted him with the truth. He wondered how many times he had talked about his life, his struggles, his dreams, never knowing that the person listening already knew something essential about him that he did not. He thought about the moment she told him she was pregnant and how he believed he was about to become a father, how he built dreams around that idea. And now, learning that even that part of his story was based on misinformation made him feel foolish and exposed. He wasn't just hurt, he was embarrassed. Embarrassed that so many people knew pieces of his story while he remained clueless. The judge's words echoed in both of their minds. The reminder that truth, no matter how painful, is necessary for healing. That secrets don't protect children, they only delay the pain until it becomes overwhelming. Those words hit harder now that the courtroom was quiet. Their mother sat alone, realizing that her fear had shaped an entire family's reality. She had believed that silence was safer than honesty, that keeping things hidden would allow life to move forward without disruption. But now she saw clearly that the disruption was inevitable. It didn't disappear. It waited. She wanted to apologize, but she knew apologies could not undo years of confusion. She could only hope that, in time, her children would understand that her choices were rooted in fear, not malice. Fear of abandonment, fear of judgment, fear of losing the people she loved most. The contrast between love and truth became painfully clear that day. Love had existed in that family. It was real, but love without honesty had left scars that could not be ignored. As Precious and Hector prepared to leave, the man they called Dad gathered them close. He told them they were leaving together, as a family, regardless of what anyone said. He reminded them that family is not just about blood, but about commitment. He said he wasn't walking away now, and he wasn't walking away later. He had chosen them a long time ago, and that choice still stood. For Precious, that promise meant everything. Even without knowing who her biological father was, she knew who had shown up. She knew who loved her consistently. That didn't erase her desire for answers, but it gave her strength to keep searching without losing herself completely. The day didn't end with closure. It ended with reality. Some questions remained unanswered. Some wounds were still open, but the lies had stopped, and that alone felt like progress. In the other case, Haynes walked out of court carrying a different kind of pain. He didn't lose a child he knew. He lost the possibility of one. For 4 years, he had lived in emotional limbo, unsure whether to move forward or hold on. Now he finally had an answer, even though it wasn't the one he hoped for. He felt sad for Zoe, a little girl growing up with questions she was too young to fully understand. He wished her mother would continue searching for the truth, not out of anger but out of love. Children deserve clarity, even when adults are uncomfortable with it. Zoe's mother watched him walk away, knowing she still carried responsibility. She had hoped her instincts were right, but now she was faced with the reality that her daughter still did not know who her biological father was. She realized that avoiding the truth only extended the pain, not just for herself, but for her child. Both cases shared the same lesson. The truth does not destroy families. The absence of truth does. Silence creates confusion. Half-truths create anger. And children, no matter how old they are, feel the weight of secrets meant to protect them. For Precious and Hector, the road ahead would be long. There would be difficult conversations, therapy, and moments of doubt. There would be anger, grief, and eventually, acceptance. They would have to redefine what family meant to them, not based on assumptions, but on actions and honesty. Precious would walk down the aisle knowing that the man beside her was there because he chose to be, not because a test told him to. Hector would begin the painful process of understanding his origins, learning to separate love from deception, and rebuilding trust at his own pace. What happened in that courtroom could not be undone, but it could be transformed. Pain, when faced honestly, can become clarity, and clarity, though uncomfortable, opens the door to healing. They didn't leave with perfect answers. They left with the truth. And for the first time in their lives, that truth, as painful as it was, gave them a chance to finally understand who they were and who they could become.